Sick of getting blisters? Stop slipping and just be comfortable with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Great fit, great comfort, lots of grip, and an even better price. Available now at puregripsocks.com.
Copa or Tiempo. Both controversial in their own ways, with the Copa Pure.1 being a premium price point leather football boot, but one that features calfskin rather than kangaroo leather, with the Tiempo not featuring any leather at all. It's a full synthetic football boot promising the feel and comfort of natural kangaroo leather. And considering these compromises, we must ask the question, which one is better? Despite not featuring a kangaroo leather upper, like I think most people would expect from a top-end leather football boot, the retail price of the Copa Pure.1 is $230, which is by no means inexpensive, but it is less than pretty much all the other top-end options within the Adidas brand. Where the Legend 10 Elite strips the kangaroo leather from the Legend 9 it replaces in favor of Fly Touch Plus synthetic, but maintains the same $230 retail price. Once again, the cheapest top-end football boot on offer from Nike, and also the same price as the Copas. So price shouldn't be a deciding factor. Or should it? And the reason why I say that is because of this boot right here, the Tiempo Legend 10 Pro, the first takedown model in the new Tiempo lineup that, as you can see side by side with the Elite model, is virtually identical. However, it retails for $90 less at $140. What's the difference? Well, basically nothing that matters. Down to the gram, it is more or less the exact same football boot for a lot less money. So if you are considering the top-end Tiempos, please consider the Pros. For less money, it's the same boot. On the opposite end of the price spectrum, you have the Copa Pure Plus. Basically everything you get from the laced Pure.1, but of course with a laceless construction. These guys retailing for $280, so quite a bit more expensive, but legitimately a fantastic pair of football boots if you're into the laceless thing, particularly if you want a pair of laceless boots with a leather upper. Not only is this pretty well your only option, it is legitimately one of the best laceless boots on the market. When it comes to touch on the ball, nothing feels quite like a natural leather upper, and while the Copa Pure.1 has been criticized for not being kangaroo leather, the calfskin they've included is as soft, if not softer, than most kangaroo leather uppers currently on the market, and honestly, most kangaroo leather uppers that have come out in the last several years. It's really, really impressive, incredibly soft, super pliable, an amazing feel for the ball, and on the thinner side as far as leather uppers go. So if you're worried about having too padded of a feel, that shouldn't be a concern here. These still feel very connected to your foot and very connected to the ball in terms of not being bulky in any way whatsoever. That also means, as far as leather boots go, these don't really offer much in the way of actual protection, just based on how thin and pliable this upper is. And you also have it paired up with their Fusion Skin technology, which basically fuses the leather in the forefoot and toe box area to this kind of neoprene-based synthetic that you have in the midfoot that adds structure to the upper, is going to prevent really a critical area of the boot from stretching, maintaining a good overall fit and responsiveness. It will allow the boot to retain its shape through the midfoot significantly better, and it also does a really good job of matching the overall padding and thickness of the leather at the front. So in terms of touch on the ball, very consistent across the entire foot, and also something that really does differ from certain versions of the Tiempo Legend 10, the upper is left relatively slick. So in terms of giving you extra grip on the ball, there really isn't any here whatsoever. Where the Tiempo, very controversially, for the first time ever, will be available exclusively as a synthetic football boot. The kangaroo leather of the Legend 9 is no more, and instead the upper has been replaced by a synthetic material called Fly Touch Plus, basically a continuation of Nike's Kangolite synthetic that was originally introduced on the CTR 360 lineup, but honestly, way better than any variation of Kangolite that we've seen in the past. Nike claims that this material is softer than natural leather, and in a lot of ways it is impressively pliable and does come pretty close to natural leather in that specific category. However, what I do think it loses out to when compared to actual leather is still that overall pliability and just the slight bit of stretch that you get from a natural leather material. Also, in terms of touch on the ball, it's maybe lacking in plushness, especially especially when compared to the super soft upper of the Copa Pure.1. So when it comes to outright touch, I still prefer the natural leather feel of the Copa. However, the benefits of this upper being fully synthetic should not be ignored. It's going to retain its shape significantly better. There's better overall structure to this upper all the way through. So from a lockdown and responsiveness standpoint, this does feel a lot more modern than what you're going to find from the Copa Pure.1. Also, the grip on the surface. It does appear to have a pretty standard leather grain finish, even though that is, of course, entirely artificial, but the grip on the surface is significant on the ball. It is way, I don't want to say stickier, but there is a noticeable amount of grip from this upper that you just won't get from a natural leather material. You're also going to find the grip dots here on the medial side, which I didn't find to do that much in the way of additional grip. The grip seems to be consistent across the entire upper, and also for anyone that cares, the boots do also feature Nike's ACC All Conditions Control technology, which ultimately I don't think does much of anything. And if having additional grip isn't your thing, even though there are only 2 colorways of the Legend 10 so far, this Women's World Cup colorway with the printed pattern on the surface has a completely different grip level on the ball than the black colorway, this being completely smooth and really offering very little additional grip, being much more close to the more slick finish of the Copa Pure.1. So if you want less grip, go for this colorway. If you want more grip, go for the more traditional black colorway. I touched on it a little bit already, but I think a lot of people buy into this category of football boots because they want that slightly more padded feel to the upper, where in the event that they do get stepped on, they have that little bit of protection. Obviously, the Copa is natural leather. However, the leather itself is so thin, there really isn't any protection to be had. And in the case of the Tiempo, it's synthetic, but also very, very thin and extremely pliable. So should you get stepped on with these, it's going to hurt just as bad. In other words, neither really offer much in the way of protection compared to other modern football boots. When it comes to sole plates and stud patterns, I'll be very blunt with you in saying that I just think the Tiempo is better. And that's not to say that the torsion frame of the Copa Pure.1 is bad. However, it is recycled sole plate tooling from the Adidas Nemesis that came out back in 2017. I didn't really think it was a standout on those. I don't think it's necessarily a standout on these. And again, it's not a bad sole plate or a bad stud pattern, but I definitely would like it to be a little bit more flexible given how soft, thin, and pliable this natural leather upper is. And as far as the stud pattern is concerned, it's typical Adidas in terms of giving you your 4 studs in the heel, 6 studs on either side of the forefoot with 1 support stud in the middle. This kind of half circle with a bladed edge shape does provide a nice level of bite, and the studs are definitely a little bit longer on the FG variation of this boot compared to the FG variation of the Nike Tiempo. But overall, I find that there's kind of a little bit of unusual pressure in the forefoot that I'm personally not a huge fan of. And it's just one of those sole plates and stud patterns that has nothing about it that really stands out to me. Where the sole plate and stud pattern of the Legend 10 is technically all new, but also very, very familiar. As far as the sole plate is concerned, it's way more flexible through the forefoot than what you're going to find from the Copas, which I think really works well for this style of football boot. Nike in their marketing do point out these 2 little cutouts that are there to reduce stud pressure, although I can't say that you feel them whatsoever. In general, I think the pressure distribution across the bottom of the foot is definitely better with the Tiempos, but I don't necessarily credit that to these 2 elements. This feels pretty much like the same sole plate that was found on the Legend 9 that this replaces. And as far as the stud pattern is concerned, you get your bladed studs in the heel with conical studs in the forefoot, some bladed studs at the tip of the toe. I would argue that this just feels more well-rounded than the Copas. I would say the traction actually feels a little bit more aggressive for whatever reason, and in general, it just feels better balanced all the way through. This is a classic stud pattern. It's been on the Tiempo series basically since the Legend 1, so it shouldn't be that much of a surprise that this is still really, really good. It is a staple of the Tiempo, and the one Tiempo tradition, if you will, that remains intact on the Legend 10. When it comes to weight, the difference between these 2 is pretty significant. Both in the same size 9.5 US. We'll start off with the Copa Pure.1, and you can see that they weigh in at 7.95 ounces, the equivalent of 225 grams, which is still relatively lightweight for a pair of leather football boots. And I guess the Tiempo is no longer a leather football boot, but throw those on the scale and you can see that they weigh in at 7.05 ounces, the equivalent of 200 grams, which is a weight difference of 25 grams. Very significant, very noticeable both in hand as well as on feet. And again, I don't want to say that these are heavy football boots, but in comparison to the Tiempos, these are speed boot light. When it comes to comfort and fit, I can confidently say that both the Copa and the Tiempos are the two most comfortable boots currently on offer from both Adidas as well as Nike. As far as differences are concerned, you're definitely going to notice a slightly more traditional type of feel from the natural leather of the Copa Pure.1. I would personally make the argument that it edges out the Copa in terms of overall comfort. And of course, with any natural leather material, as you wear them in, they soften up even further and you get that little bit of stretch, giving you that custom sensation. In contrast to the Copa, however, I think the Tiempo does a remarkably good job of simulating that leather-like sensation from a synthetic material. It's not necessarily going to have that kind of molded custom fit shape even after break-in time, but it's incredibly pliable and gives you a lot of the characteristics that historically you've only been able to get from a natural leather material. Still also very, very comfortable, but again, I still give the edge to the natural leather of the Copas. As far as overall width is concerned, there's definitely more width to the Copas, both in terms of the predetermined shape of these two boots, but also as you wear them in, that leather will of course stretch, particularly through the forefoot and toe box area. There's just more width with the Copa Pure.1. That's not to say that I think the Tiempo is overly narrow, but particularly through the toe box area, it does taper quite a bit. And if you do have a wider overall foot, you'll definitely find the Copas a little bit more comfortable. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing both of these boots in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So regardless of which one you decide to go for, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, even though both of these football boots from a marketing standpoint are trying to achieve the same thing, because they do so in such different ways, it's really hard to pick a winner between them. Where when it comes to picking between these two, I think you really have to prioritize what you really want. If that is a natural leather upper and the feel for the ball that only natural leather can provide, I think you'll prefer the Copas. Where if you just want something that is leather-like in terms of feel and kind of value more so the objective performance characteristics of a modern pair of football boots, you'll probably prefer the Tiempos. In other words, the only bad choice between these two is spending $230 on the Legend 10 Elite when you can get the exact same thing from the Legend 10 Pro for $140. They're all great football boots, it just depends on what you want.